Thank you very much for everyone quieting down. We're going to get going now. My name's Jim Atwood. I'm a co-owner of the restaurant with my wife Leslie and Chef Michael. And on behalf of the entire staff and family here at Winston, we want to welcome you. We're really delighted to celebrate. To be celebrating today's event and the Wolf Conservation Center more broadly. I'm here not only with Maggie from the Wolf Conservation Center, but also our Earth Justice. Oh, there you are! Marjorie from Earth Justice as well, who's also co-hosting the event today. And of course, we have our special guest, Representative Nita Lowey. So, before I ask my friend Nita to say a few comments, I need to tell you a few things about our Congresswoman. First of all, I went online just to make sure I was right on this, but her district comes up to, I think, 3 blocks north of here. So we are in Nita's district, okay? Just so Nita, I want you to know that Winston created about 50 jobs in the district.
Yay!
But at any rate, as you all know, she's a long-serving Congresswoman. She's in her 14th term. She was elected to Congress in 1988, back when the district was a little different. It's now New York's 17th district. But more importantly, she's a big cheese in Congress. She is the ranking member of the House Appropriations Committee, which, for those of you who don't know, they're the ones who dole out all the money. So, yeah, so, and if the Democrats were the majority, she would be chairwoman.
Oh.
But let me tell you a couple other things. Congressional Quarterly has called Nita one of the 50 most effective members in Congress. And isn't that nice?
Yes.
One of the 50 most effective members of Congress today. And there are a lot of them, as we know, who aren't particularly effective, so we're delighted to have one of the most effective ones here. But in addition, I realized when looking at her website that she's part of the Animal Protection Caucus. I didn't even know there was an Animal Protection Caucus, but so there you go. But more importantly, she's been a leader in environmental protection, homeland security, women's issues, educational opportunity, healthcare, veterans, and of course, animal protection. So please join me in welcoming Representative Nita.
I'm so thrilled to be here. And you don't always introduce your husband, Steve Lowey, but Steve Lowey raised Steve Lowey reminded me that we came to see the wolves with my grandchildren. We have 3 children and 8 grandchildren. And that was a must-stop for a couple of my grandchildren. How many years ago?
About a dozen years ago.
About a dozen years ago. And he also reminded me that Alain Grimaud, who we have heard, the magnificent Alain Grimaud, at Caramore, and Jim and Leslie, as you know, not only are wonderful in protecting wolves, but they are wonderful in the forefront of music and art. In fact, almost every good with Leslie go. I want to tell you, if I stray in one vote ever, and I'm very careful not to do that, because Leslie is probably, well, there may be some Republicans here, so I better. Leslie is a strong, strong Democratic activist, and she doesn't always agree, as I don't always agree. But this is quite a time in Congress before we get to the wolves, I must say. Number one, I'm thrilled to be ranking member on the Appropriations Committee, which means I'm not the chair, which would be better, but we have 12 appropriation committees. And the reason this is so important, and the reason we keep fighting, and people like you give me strength every time I come to an extraordinary, can you hear me up there? An extraordinary event like this, because our job is to stop all the negative riders on appropriations. And in case you don't know what a negative rider is up there, on each 12 of the appropriation committees, the Republicans want to have you use more coal, fight against any of the environmental riders, air, water, wolves, endangered species. See, we have a shaking head there. You can verify that. And so, what's really happening, just to give you the inside scoop, 2 years ago, if you remember, we had a deal where Ryan Murray, Senator Murray, Congressman Ryan, I was part of that discussion, we will say the meeting, where we agreed to put together a 2-year plan. Now this is May, and the Republicans know that it's May, June, July, September, August, we're not there. We get a month. And so September, I better not say that, we may have some other people running for Congress here. But anyway, we get a month in August, and then September, it's because of all the holidays. Then we come back October, November, December. And the good guy Republicans, not everyone's a right-winger, my friends, the good guy Republicans, understand we have to make a deal. So this week, when we had this awful Amtrak crash, and we were dealing with a bill that's investing in roads and bridges and highways, at one point, I just turned to Chairman Rogers and I said, look, let's get real. You're wasting my time, the taxpayer money. We're going to go on for May, June, July, September, October, November, and not have a deal to December. And that's what they think is going to be the time they need, not to soften the heart of the right-wingers who are anti-environment, anti-this, anti-jobs, anti-everything else, but to make them realize that we need a deal. So when I said get real, it got a lot of press, but you probably don't see that on me. Pardon me?
For the wolves.
I'm ready for the wolves. So what I was saying, there is a tremendous, tremendous amount of support in the Congress for preservation, to make sure, and in fact I'm going to look at my notes so I don't forget one little fact here. Despite the incredible crowd here who understands how important Atka is, in the middle of this turmoil, that's the only reason I got into that background, and despite the economy showing signs of recovery, some members of Congress have introduced legislation that would permanently delist wolves from the Endangered Species Act. The reason I gave you that background is because what these members do is attach them to the other appropriation bills. So that is why I brought that up as background, because we have to fight this all the time. They try to attach anti-environment, the delisting of wolves from the Endangered Species Act, undermining science-based principles, and ignoring a court ruling overturning the delisting of the gray wolf. And that's really what's important. Those who want to delist it are now trying to attach it to the bills that are must pass, because the other bills, what we call the authorizing bills, don't have to pass. You can make all kinds of statements and they don't have to pass. Appropriations bills have to pass. And that's why I gave that to you for a background, because I am very much opposed to those efforts. I recently wrote a letter to Secretary Jewell proposing listing wolves as threatened. And what this would do is continue the full protection of wolves like Atka, protecting wolves from hunting and trapping. And in Atka's home state of Minnesota itself, 400 wolves, 400 were killed in 2012 alone. Isn't that extraordinary? And this is why I apologize if I sounded too political, but I just wanted you to know that there's a lot of support in the Congress for the environment, a lot of support for animal rights, a lot of support for preventing the extinction of a wolf like Atka, but we are made to deal with this because they're attached to all the appropriation bills, and that's where the fights happen. So it's unacceptable to allow wolf hunts. It's unconscionable that these hunters are allowed to use inhumane, body-gripping traps to catch wolves, even within wildlife refuge. And I think that was my first bill where I got hundreds and hundreds of response on emails. I introduced that years and years ago because it is so cruel and so inhumane. And I think it's important for us to remember that the gray wolves like Atka depend on the National Wildlife Refuge System as a sanctuary for their survival. And it should not be a place where trapping is allowed. And that's what some people want to do by attaching a rider onto these appropriation bills. That's why I have reintroduced the Refuge from Cruel Trapping Act. It would ban the inhumane body-gripping trap from being used in the National Wildlife Refuge System.
Round of applause for that.
Yay! Go, Nita!
It's extraordinary that you could think that some people would even advocate in a National Wildlife Refugee System to allow these inhumane traps.
The operative word being refuge.
Exactly. Who
And
said that?
Department
You're
of
right.
Natural Resources.
You're right. But sometimes things happen. Anybody, you have better things to do in this crowd than watch C-SPAN. But if you watch some of the stuff that's going on C-SPAN, things like this do happen, and it's wrong, it's inhumane. And I want you to know I'm not alone in the Congress in support of the gray wolf. There would be, frankly, it would be impossible without so many great organizations like the Wolf Conservation Center that are really out there helping the cause. And I think you should give yourselves a gift. So, some people may say that the gray wolf is at a tipping point. Not if they come to a group like this, because you are people who care, you get out there and you advocate, and I cannot tell you how important your emails, your letters, your looking at Facebook pages really are, because it gives, I mean, I'm out there for you anyway, all the time, but there are some people who aren't so sure, you know, they think maybe this is not such a good idea. So your support, your activism, and who told me there are how many million?
Oh, 2 million Wolf Center Facebook page.
Can you believe it? 2 million people on the Wolf Center Facebook